Hey, this is the coach, and you're listening to an interview from a live broadcast of the Coach and Cole Show on Blog Talk Radio. You can find us on demand on iTunes and on TuneIn. Shift over to the other winter sport, and that's a sport that takes place mostly up north when you're a kid, but all over the nation in the NHL. And we're going to shift over into the NHL, and we've got a guest this week to talk about it. He's from the Hockey Writers Network, and he's the co-host of Beyond the Blade. And we're going to bring him on. It's Chad Dedominicis here. Can you hear us, Chad?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. How you doing?
Hey, really good, really good. All right, well, before we get into the NHL playoffs, Chad, you're the host of Beyond the Blade, and it's a podcast on the Hockey Writers Network. And you guys cover everything that is Buffalo Sabres. And they're not going to be participating in the NHL playoffs this year, but Jack Eichel has really developed into the star we thought he was going to be. Evander Kane has had some bright spots, and then Rasmus Ristolainen has really shown he can be quite the workhorse. But what I wanted to ask you here, Chad, was Buffalo paid Kyle Okposo a boatload of money this offseason, and he's not traveling with the team right now, and he is in neuro ICU. So can you tell us anything about his status? This is kind of a weird situation because we really don't know what's going on. So can you tell us anything about his status and what exactly is going on with him?
Yeah, and the latest is he was dismissed or released from the hospital today. So that's good news. But at this point, there hasn't been anything beyond that, exactly what is ailing him, what the illness is. He suddenly fell ill, I think it was last Tuesday, the 28th, and they're supposed to play Columbus. He missed that game. Everyone thought it was a flu, but he hasn't played since then. And then, he ends up in the ICU, and that's, the neurosurgical ICU, which is a scary stuff, and that's brain injuries. So nothing has been released. The good news is he's been released from the hospital, but I don't think we'll know anything until after the season or until Okposo gives the green light, because with the HIPAA laws, the team really can't say much, and then the doctor's not going to give you much either for reporters who are asking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really not something we're used to dealing with as far as in the world of sports, because these teams have to disclose what the injuries are. But something of this nature where he's in a hospital in a neuro ICU, this is a different situation. So something we're not used to seeing, and good luck to him. Hopefully he's all right and gets to join the team next season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see what the outcome is. At this point, I'm not too worried about next season unless, they come out saying it's some stroke or a blood clot, then you have some issues there. But, hopefully it's maybe just kind of scared, maybe like a meningitis type deal. But, I guess we'll find out. Because he had a really good season, and they missed him a lot. He was out before the sickness with, a few broken ribs. So he was out about 3 or 4 weeks, and they missed him a lot. The goal-scoring dipped without him. So they really need him back, especially if they give him that big contract.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into what we're looking at here for the 2017 NHL playoffs, and let's start on your side of the country there, the Eastern Conference. We've got 2 matchups already set. That's the Montreal Canadiens against the New York Rangers, and then we've got the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So starting with the Canadiens Rangers, what are you expecting out of this series, and do you think it's going to come down to goaltending between the two horses, Carey Price and the King, Henrik Lundqvist?
It's a couple of weeks ago, I thought the Rangers were going to walk away with this series pretty easy. They even had a nice point lead on the Canadiens, but looking at it now, Montreal actually now has more points than New York. It's tough. Price and Lundqvist are 2 of the best goalies in the league. From a team-wise perspective, in depth, New York, I believe, has Montreal, and it's not really even close. The Rangers can roll 4 lines of speed and scoring. It's just if they're going to get that type of scoring. Jimmy Vesey's kind of died out here after a hot start. Rick Nash has always been a guy who's struggled in the playoffs that they rely a lot on. And then defensively, Montreal is the better team, but we'll see how Shea Weber's injury is, if it's really that serious. And for the Rangers, defense has really been their, I guess you could say, their crutch all season. They've really struggled. Outside of McDonough, there's not a lot there defensively. So it's going to be a closer series than I thought it would be initially, but I still think at the end of the day, unless Montreal or Carey Price stands on his head, I just think the Rangers are a deeper team and they're more experienced, and I think I think it'll be a long series, 6 or 7, but I think the Rangers will win that one.
Yeah, it should be good. It's going to be a goaltending battle, I think, with those two guys. Like you mentioned, I mean, those guys are two of the best goaltenders in the league, and it could come down to who plays the better series. But I think you're right. I think New York, on paper, is the better team through and through. They're deeper. They go, a few lines deep, whereas Montreal really, has the Pacioretty line, and Brandon Gallagher really hasn't played up to snuff this year, considering what we saw last year out of him. So,
Right.
But defensively, yeah, Montreal's better, and it's going to be a good one to see how that turns out. As far as the Penguins and Blue Jackets goes, these two teams met 3 times this season. Pittsburgh won 2 of the 3. 2 of the games, there were 5 or more goals scored, and I'm anticipating this to be not about goaltending like the previous series here, but it's going to be about who can score more goals. Is that what you're seeing play out in this one?
Well, I mean, first off, I think it's a shame the way the NHL does their playoff format now, that one of these 2 teams are going home in the first round, because these are 2 of the best teams in the league, but one's going to go home.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the new format is. But, it's interesting. You said, the goalies, aren't to be that big of a factor. But if you take a step back and look at it, Matt Murray's a really good goaltender. He led Pittsburgh to the Stanley Cup last year. And then Sergei Bobrovsky for Columbus, he's arguably going to be the Vezina winner this year. So,
True.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you have Crosby, you have Malkin, you're going to have, guys in Columbus, too, that could put the puck in the net. So, yeah, it'll be a high-scoring series. You would think that, but with those 2 goaltenders, it could also be a low-scoring series. I think it's going to be a physical series. I think it's going to be tight. These 2 teams played a few years ago when Columbus snuck in, and, Pittsburgh was a high seed, and they really pushed Pittsburgh to the end and even kind of scared Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh barely walked away with it. I think the biggest thing here is that Pittsburgh is not going to have Chris Letang. He's out for the rest of the season with the neck surgery he's going to get. And they're already short defensemen. Sure, they're going to get some guys back, but Oli Mata hasn't played in a couple months. He'll be back. But, throwing those guys back in when they've been out that long and then back in the playoff series, it'll be really tough for Pittsburgh. I still think Pittsburgh, at the end of the day, gets out of this series because I know Columbus has put up the points, but I just still don't think they're that deep of a team. Unless Bobrovsky stands on his head and guys like Werenski and Jones defensively are excellent, I still think Crosby and Malkin and that offense in Pittsburgh is just too much, and the experience too.
Yeah, I think the experience, like you said, is going to be really something. And good point. Bobrovsky has been great all year. He's probably going to win that trophy. And Columbus really has been struggling as of late. They haven't been the team that they had been. They've had to shake up some lines a little bit here and there, and so we'll see how it goes. Should be a fun one. We're talking with Chad Dedominicis here, Coach and Cole Show, Blog Talk Radio. Let's shift over to the Western Conference. There's 8 teams are set. We've got the Blackhawks, Wild, Blues, Predators in the Central, and we've got the Ducks, Oilers, Sharks, and Flames. It looks like it's going to be a matchup between the Flames, who are going to get the wild card, and they're going to get the Anaheim Ducks. And the Ducks have been pretty much red hot in the month of through the later part of March and into April here. Do the Flames really have a shot at all to win that series if that's who they get?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the other thing is, too, is I don't have the number in front of me, but I don't think they've won in Anaheim in, I don't know if the number is up to like 5, 6, even 7 years. They have not won a game in Anaheim.
Wow.
I mean, you're going to have to win 3 games at least in Anaheim, and they haven't won one in that long. John Gibson is really going right now. I mean, Perry and Getzlaf struggled last year in the playoffs, and they've had a tough season this year. But Anaheim's got guys like Raquel. Patrick Eves has been a great addition when they brought him over. Defense in Anaheim. I mean, they're going to be without Fowler probably for a few games of this, which is a big loss for them. But, I mean, they're young and deep with Montour and Manson, who have stepped up this year. And, I mean, don't forget about Ryan Kessler, too. I mean, give Calgary credit. They're a young team. They started off slow. But, I mean, Johnny Gaudreau's a good hockey player. So is Monahan. I just think Anaheim is too much. I think they kind of – a lot of the players are going to feel the pressure, too. They have to get out of this round. For Anaheim, looking at a lot of changes this offseason. But I think Anaheim at least gets out of this round. Beyond that, I don't know. It's tough when they're on paper, they're that good of a team and they're that hot, but come playoffs on the Ducks, just never seem to put it together.
Yeah, that's true. Like you said, on paper, they're really something. They're deep. They go three lines deep. There's no doubt about it. They've got the star power. They're a physical, tough team, good defensively. They're good all the way around, and I don't think the Flames are going to have a chance. Like you say, I agree with you there. Minnesota and St. Louis, they look like they're going to be matched up. Looked like St. Louis was packing it up when they fired Ken Hitchcock, had problems there, and then they traded franchise defenseman Kevin Shattenkirk away. And the Blues have actually played their best hockey of the year with Mike Yeo at the helm and without Shattenkirk. So who would have thought that? A month ago, we would have never thought we were going to be asking this question. But, Chad, do you think the Blues can upset the Wild in this series?
I think it comes down to one thing, and that's what they're going to get at Jake Allen in net. Dubnyk has been great all year long. He has struggled as of late, and so has Minnesota. You know, Minnesota was playing really well, and then now they've been playing pretty poor. I don't think they're as good as they were early. I don't think they're as bad as they've been playing as of late. I think there's somewhere in the middle there. Minnesota, they have a lot of experience. Ryan Suter, Parise has had a great year, but you know he's been in these moments. They've both been Parise at least has been to a Stanley Cup final. You know, it's going to be a good series, but I really think it all comes down to is what the Blues are going to get in net. They're good defensively. You know, Tarasenko is one of the best scorers in the league, and that guy can get really hot and carry a team in around. But I think a lot of this is going to fall on Jake Allen. And, you know, beyond that, if they don't get at least equal or pretty good goaltending to what they're going to face against Dubnyk, I think the Blues could be in for a short series. But if they get the goaltending, they could surprise the people and beat Minnesota.
Yeah, and exactly. And then, of course, you've got the fact that Mike Yeo coached in Minnesota for quite a few years. How much does something like that matter, in your opinion, when a coach previously was with a team that he's coaching against in a playoff series?
You know, I mean, it's been a couple of years since he's been out of Minnesota, so there's some new players in there. I think, if anything, if you're going to see that type of situation, you're going to see that maybe with Todd McClellan in Edmonton against San Jose. Yeah. He's been out of San Jose for a couple of years, but it's a lot of the same players in San Jose. We're here in Minnesota. There's some of the same guys, but it's different. I don't think in that series it's going to make that much of a difference. But if you're going to look at that type of scenario, I think you're going to see that in Edmonton against the Sharks, because McCullough knows how to shut some of those guys down. Thornton, say what you want, he's going to play, but he hurt himself at the end of the year. He's not going to be 100%. San Jose has really struggled down the back end here, and usually the way it works out in most of these playoff series is the team with the best player wins. And Connor McDavid is either number 2 or number 1 in the league, depending who you talk to right now. And that team is rolling in Edmonton. And if I'm San Jose, I am really scared about that matchup.
Yeah, no doubt. That kid is scary good, and he's a player, like you said, that could carry a team through a series. And that's going to be interesting to watch, too. And obviously, we've got to touch on the Washington Capitals. And they get Shattenkirk from St. Louis at the deadline, like we mentioned. This team is just scary good. They're probably the most talented team in the NHL. But they've never won a Stanley Cup. And Chad, the question is, and a lot of Washington fans are wondering, is this their year?
You know, I think if it's not this year, when is it ever going to be their year? I mean, look at the luck they're getting. They're probably going to get Toronto. I think they escaped a awful scenario of getting the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is still possible. And Tampa Bay is winning right now, so they're going to be within 1 point of Toronto. And Toronto has Pittsburgh and Columbus at the last 2 games. I mean, they're going to rest some players, but still, it's not an easy matchup. But I think if they don't get Tampa Bay, if they get the Toronto, the Islanders, they'll be fine. If they get Tampa Bay with a healthy Stamkos and healthy Tyler Johnson, they could be in trouble in the first round. But other than that, I think they'll roll through the first round. You know, it's that second round, but they're getting some breaks. I mean, Pittsburgh's going to be without Letang. So if you get them in the next round, which that would be their matchup, you know, that's a good break. And then, you know, the Atlantic Division, I think, is the weakest, maybe the weakest division in the league. And if you get whoever comes out of there, I think you're in good shape. Now, once you hit the Western Conference and the Stanley Cup Final, if you get there, maybe that's a different story. But if Washington can't put it together this year, from talking to some people that I know who cover the Capitals, is there's only been 2 guys that have been the staple during these struggles in the playoffs, and that's Backstrom and Ovechkin. Now, it'd be hard to believe that the Capitals ever move from Ovechkin, but if they go out early in round 1 or round 2, it's very possible we could see them move a guy like Backstrom to shake some things up. And even Barry Trotz could be in trouble too. So it's a big series and big playoffs for the Capitals for all those players in that roster. I think they need to at least get to the conference finals to get some of the pressure off of them and even keep that team together and keep that coach there as well.
Yeah. Interesting thought there. I mean, you never really think of a guy like Backstrom being moved ever, but I think you're right. If they don't get there to the Stanley Cup or at least the conference finals, like you mentioned, they're definitely going to have to shake things up because, like you said, if it isn't this year, when is it going to be? And those, I feel for those fans in Washington because they've had talented teams over the years. They just never been able to get it done, and they might have the path to getting to the Stanley Cup Finals this season. There's no doubt about it. Cole, before we let Chad run, did you have anything you wanted to ask him?
Yeah, just one question. I know a lot of listeners probably know that I don't know shit about hockey or baseball for that matter. I just had one question, though, Chad. With your last name, are you Greek or are you Italian?
It's actually Italian.
Good. I knew it. That's all I had.
All right. Hey, he's Italian, and he's Chad Dedominicis. They can find your work at thehockeywriters.com. You're the co-host of Beyond the Blade podcast. Where can they find you on Twitter, Chad, and where can they find your show?
It's at C_D_Dominicis. I don't want to try to spell it. It's DEDOMINICIS 10. And then you can find us on the Hockey Writers Podcast Network, thehockeywriters.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, I think it's all TuneIn. Pretty much anywhere you come to a podcast, we'll be there. You can find us.
All right, cool. Look them up. It's a great show. If you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, there's no doubt in my mind you're going to want to take a listen to that podcast. It's great. Chad does great work, so go ahead and look him up. And Chad, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You know, I think I actually learned something listening to him.
Really?
Which rarely ever happens when someone tries to talk to me about hockey.